On your version of Brexit, staying in a customs union, Britain wouldn't be able to negotiate trade deals with the likes of China or India or the US. So what's the point of leaving the European Union?
People of this country vote to leave the European Union. That's a done deal. Our view is that half of British trade is with the European Union. Manufacturing jobs are very important. We're here in Coventry, which is the centre of car industry, and sales in Europe are very important, as well as imports from Europe. And so what we're keen to do is maintain that trade relationship. But we're not going to reduce ourselves to a position where we have no influence over any rules, so we would have a customs union with the European Union.
Well, what you want is an arrangement whereby the rest of the European Union would give Britain an influence, but they don't give Turkey any influence over their trade policy, so why should they give us any influence?
There is a huge amount of trade across the Channel. Manufacturing industry is very interdependent. We are the 5th biggest economy in the world. I think we're in a position to negotiate a reasonable relationship.
And what do you mean by influence? Ultimately, there are 27 of them, there's one of us. We'd always be outvoted, even if we had a say.
The 27 are not necessarily all speaking with one voice all the time, and indeed there are huge tensions, differences of opinion, differences of emphasis across the European Union. I think we can negotiate a reasonable relationship which maintains our manufacturing capacity and trade with Europe, and that we would have a say on the trade relationships we have with other countries as well. But what we're not doing is what the Tories, or some of the Tories, want to do, which is take us down the road of a sort of deregulated economy, sign up to transatlantic trade and investment partnership, which would give investor protection and be very damaging to living standards and jobs in this country.
Now, there are a number of Tory MPs who quite clearly are rather closer to your position on membership of a customs union than they are to Theresa May's. They've tabled an amendment to the trade bill, new clause 5, which is in favour of being part of a customs union. Will you instruct your MPs to vote in favour of that amendment?
We'll decide before the vote is taken exactly how we're going to vote on it. We have put our own amendment down, which is about a form of customs union.
But presumably you'd like to defeat the government on this issue.
I want to maintain and protect jobs in this country. This is a serious issue. The Tories are taking us down the road of a cliff edge with all kinds of dangers in the future. What we're saying is there should be a transition period. Belatedly, the government accepted that. We've said during that transition period there has to be a continuation of existing trade rules, and this will give us the opportunity to negotiate something for the future. We're quite serious about protecting jobs in this country. I'm not so sure about Boris Johnson or indeed those 62 that wrote to the Daily Telegraph, and their only offer was to have a bonfire of regulations in this country. Those regulations protect workers' rights, maternity leave, paternity leave, safe working conditions. They're quite important.
Now, in your speech just now, you argued migrants don't drive down wages. In fact, you made a very positive case for the benefits of migration. So, if there are those benefits from migration, why not simply sign up for membership of the European single market?
Because you cannot be in the single market if you're not a member of the European Union.
But you could rejoin via EFTA in the way that Norway has.
But Norway has no say over what rules it has to abide by, except in fisheries and agriculture, which they've got an exemption on. The point I was making was that those that have come to make their homes in this country, European Union nationals, made a massive contribution to our NHS. But there's another side to it as well, where there are groups of workers brought in deliberately to work in dangerous and unsafe conditions on less than the minimum wage because they're paid on a 0 hours basis and therefore they don't know when they're going to be working. Grossly exploited, quite appalling. The Posted Workers Directive needs amending to ensure that does not continue. There are people who are grossly exploited, both in all parts of Europe as well as here, who benefits unscrupulous employers.
But can I just press you on this? You've been on a journey, you've now formally signed up for membership of a customs union.
Oh, a customs union.
Yeah, a customs union, yeah, what I said.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Yes.
The indefinite article.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, you're an Arsenal supporter, you know all about the definite article.
I do, indeed. You're absolutely right. But, so, you've been on this journey, you are categorically in favour of a customs union. Are you still on a journey in respect of the single market?
Look, I haven't been on a journey, I've been on a campaign. from the referendum, in the general elections, we said all along, everywhere, we wanted to maintain a trade relationship with Europe. We've made that very, very clear. There seems to be a sort of... I think a lot of journalists spend too much time talking to each other. So they all decide...
No, we don't!
Yes, you do. And you all pretend that what you think is going to happen is going to happen. And therefore, it must happen. Therefore, somebody must change. Well, actually, we've said all along, we want trade with Europe. You couldn't do anything else. Half our exports go to Europe.
All right, very, very briefly, two or three other things on this. One is you want, you're in favour, obviously, of Parliament having a meaningful vote on the final deal. If Theresa May were defeated in that vote on a final deal, surely at that point the British people should have another vote on that deal itself, on whether we stay or leave the EU.
Well, if the government has been fundamentally defeated, then it has two choices. One is to go back and negotiate something different, or the other one is to resign. In which case we'd have a general election.
Well, but what if they decide just to put it to the people, go above the heads of Parliament? What would you think then?
I would say they would have been defeated in Parliament. They should go back and negotiate on the terms that we've tried to set out, because the Parliament is, after all, there to monitor these negotiations. The government didn't want any monitoring the negotiations. The whole process was changed because we won a number of votes in Parliament after the referendum.
Okay, and very briefly, on migration, would you be in favour of EU migrants having preferential rights to come here over migrants from the rest of the world?
Well, at the moment, EU nationals live here and so on, and we have, I made the point that they've been disgracefully treated, so we would legislate to give them permanent rights of residence. And clearly they would have rights to come and work here, and actually we need a lot of them. There's a staffing crisis in the NHS, partly brought about by the number of Eastern European people, particularly from Poland and other countries, that have gone home, so we do need those skill levels to come in. And so I think we just have to recognise the country. We've trained too few people, and we have to bring in skill sets, not just from the European Union, but from India and a number of other places. Indeed, many employers tell me they're endlessly frustrated by the problems the Home Office throws in their way.
Now, obviously you weren't and aren't a spy, but do you remember what you spoke to that Czech diplomat stroke spy about?
Well, I met him, as did a number of other people. He was the diplomat working in the Czech embassy, and his job was to talk about peace and détente. This was a time that Gorbachev was president of the USSR. There was a real chance of détente developing, of more peace within Europe. We spoke about those matters, and I told him what I thought, and he bizarrely discovered that I was opposed to Margaret Thatcher and the Tory government. I think it should not have been a surprise to him. But I had no knowledge of what Margaret Thatcher ever ate for breakfast. She never told me.
Any regrets about meeting him?
Not at all. I met him, as did many, many other members of Parliament. I also met a lot of American diplomats during that period. I went to the US Embassy to talk to them about what I thought was their wholly wrong strategy in Central America. If you're a serious member of Parliament and serious about international affairs, you meet people. You don't agree with most of them, but you have to meet them to understand what their position is and try and put forward your own view on peace, justice and human rights. I don't regret any of it.
Okay, we've got to wind up.
Why should I?
Totally. We've got to wind up. Ian McNicol, you bumped him out at last, very relieved.
Ian McNicol has resigned as General Secretary. He will be making a huge contribution to the Labour movement. We've been in touch with each other over the last few days, and we're working fine together, and there will be a new General Secretary appointed very soon.
Jeremy Corbyn, very nice to see you.